Welcome to Intellicide, where we discuss who killed common sense and intelligence and how we can help recover. So, I'm Anthony Gentry, and my co host is Kyle Palmerville. And today we're going to talk about the rise of AI, or Skynet is coming.
Well, I don't know about the rise of AI. I think we might have even talked about AI in a previous episode,
Yes, we did. Yes.
but I think it's time to talk about the misconceptions people have about AI and how their companies are rushing to use AI in ways that maybe aren't beneficial for them.
Well, people are scared though, Kyle, because they fear losing their jobs. And when you talk
Yeah,
about people's, you know,
yeah.
their way of living and
Yeah.
and everything and their
Oh, people
money.
are right to. Yeah, because the businesses are rushing to try to use AI. And the only reason that they're trying to do it is to try to, you know, um, be more efficient, which
Mhm.
is code word for use less people, pay
Mhm.
people less, have less employees.
Right.
That's been the history of the industrial age. They've done that, every time there's an innovation, some people lose their jobs. It's like when they put robots in factories. A lot of people who used to work the line lost their jobs to the robots, but it created a whole new industry for people to make and maintain those robots.
Mhm.
Um, it's the same kind of thing with AI, where there's going to be some people who do lose their job legitimately. There's going to be some people who it creates new jobs, AI prompt engineers and stuff like that.
Right.
But then there's also going to be there's the problem right now is there's Congress doesn't know what they're doing. They have
Mhm.
hardly regulated social media.
Right.
Um, and so AI, they're way behind the ball. This past summer, a bunch of AI industry leaders went before
Mhm.
Congress and basically called for them to regulate AI.
Right.
And they cited a whole bunch of reasons why, AI needs regulation. One of the biggest being one of the, you know, biggest uses for it, unfortunately, is for scamming.
Right.
AI has been used to clone people's voices. It's one of the big scams right now is that someone calls you and they
Mhm.
either use your voicemail recording, or when you answer the phone, they only need about 30 seconds of your voice and they can copy it.
Right. Yeah. I
And,
mean,
and they will call people's grandparents claiming to be their distressed grandchildren. And it's been very successful. Um, it's a tactic you and I talked about, if someone called saying they're my kid, my first thing I'm going to do is call my kid,
right. Right.
and if I understand, I heard the story before where the guy got a call, it was his distressed, grandchild. They tried to call them, but that grandchild didn't pick up the phone. So they sent the money to the scammer.
Well, okay. And so,
And
and I made the point that, okay, and it's fine if
mhm,
you don't get a response right away. Hey, wait an hour or two. There's no reason that you have to send that money that
well,
fast. Hey,
yeah,
you're
and that
in
depends on
jail.
the scam, like
Yeah,
what the
you're
scammer is
in jail.
telling them.
If they're in jail, hey, they're safe for the time being.
Right.
You can wait, give it 2 hours. Hey, you might get a call back from your grandchild. Hey, no, I'm not in prison or jail. I'm right down the street, or
Right.
even if they do go out of town. Yeah, I'm here at the hotel. I'm okay. They prey on the fear of the older generation, and
Yeah. And that's
as
not new.
yeah,
Yeah.
as I explained earlier, my wife, she works at a bank, and she's had so many customers come in. They're on the phone because they'll tell you, okay, don't tell them it's us. Just they want to hear what's being said, and they're gonna talk them through withdrawing the money to perpetrate the scam. But
Mm,
hey, hang up. That my wife tells them, oh, you're withdrawing this amount of money. Hey, what are you using the money for? And if they're hesitant to say or anything like that, then that's where she, oh, hey, this might be a scam.
right.
She saved a lot of people a ton of money from that, but she's also seen
Keeps
the
running into
after
it.
effects. Yeah, after
Yeah.
they've already done it.
Yeah. It's getting more insidious in a way. AI enables some of that. Uh,
Right.
the thing that AI, and I think even the term artificial intelligence is really misleading because there is no real intelligence behind it.
Correct. Correct.
And even in my conversations in my job involving cybersecurity and in securing AI, one of the big misconceptions that people have is that there is actual intelligence behind it. You know, that the AI, oh, do we need to protect ourselves from the AI? It's like the AI, it is a text generating, you know, there's different versions. The chat
It's a
GPT is,
conversation. It's a
well,
conversation where they have built different conversation threads. If the
mhm.
customer says these words, you respond this way, or
Depending upon how it's been trained. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
and again, it, like you said, it doesn't have its own intelligence. It's
Right.
whatever it has been built to respond with.
Right. And which it is I always go back to the like one of the original algorithms that they use for this predictive text is in Google, when it used to be when you would go into Google and start typing in your search and it would start
Mm-hmm.
filling out the search for you.
Right.
Well, that was kind of the original algorithm for that, you know, and it would originally only fill in based on what your search history was. And then they expanded it to what everybody's search history was.
Right.
And then
Right.
they took that and said, well, what would it sound like if we gave it like a ton of knowledge, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, gave it the whole internet. And they did find through trial and error that there is such a thing as too much and that the internet is not a super accurate place in aggregate.
All right.
So it is that algorithm basically trained on more data, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
that conversation that you think you're having is it filling in text that it thinks you want to have said based on whatever prompt you gave it and the data you trained it on. And
Mm-hmm.
which is why, you know, so many people are so thrown off by it when they do play with it because they expect something different or they don't give it a good prompt, so they don't get a good response.
Mm-hmm.
And it's becoming very integrated with our lives. You know, a lot of companies are rushing to use it. So one of the stories that I sent to you, um, which I was going to talk about, was another scam someone used. And it's not even really a scam because
Uh-huh.
it's not legally binding, right? It was where a guy went to a car dealership and he used the chat bot at a car dealership
Right.
and he convinced the chatbot to sell him a car for $1. Now the
Right.
chatbot's not a legal entity, right? Like
Right.
it cannot legally enter into a contract. So
Right.
that sale's not real. But the problem is what he illustrated was that if you give these things that kind of authority or power,
Mm-hmm.
they can be
Right.
manipulated by people who know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And I think we talked about this in our last show about AI. There was an AI simulator for drones, and they had, had this. Is
can
that
you
your?
hear
Is
that?
that your? Yeah, I can hear
Sorry about that.
it. So,
Speaking of AI, that's my
but
robot AI in the background. Sorry.
right, Luna.
Luna. Yeah.
So yeah, so they had created this AI, to simulate drone strikes, and there was one instance where the
Mm,
human operator was was prohibiting the drone from executing a strike,
I heard about
and
that. Okay.
the AI simulation, through its programming, said, okay, if I need to, am I'm programmed to destroy these targets, what's preventing me from destroying these targets? So it simulated bombing the control tower that the human operators was in,
Right.
so it could go and destroy its intended targets.
Right.
Now, again, it was a simulation, but that's the type of programming where, right, what's preventing me from executing my program or whatever.
Right. It's
And
a
it's
logic problem. That was an instance of where the data, the prompt that they gave it was bad.
Mhm.
Like they didn't
Right,
tell it your goal is to destroy these targets and preserve this side, you know,
right,
protect this side and destroy that side. They just said your goal is to destroy this side at any
right,
cost, whatever it takes.
right.
So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you
Right. But
know.
I mean, and
They
that
told
just
Hal to secure the doors, and Hal secured the doors.
right. That's our short-sightedness where, hey, I think I'm doing something so good and magnanimous or whatever.
Mhm.
This is gonna, help mankind. And then, hey, I set it out there in the world, and then right. Oh, I didn't think about that, you know,
Right.
action.
Right.
So
It is part of the product that ChatGPT gives out that they have trained their product to avoid some of the really messy problems. Like by itself, that algorithm or intelligence, so to speak,
mhm.
is can be used to do all sorts of really crazy, harmful stuff.
Right.
Like we
I
talked
didn't
about when in a previous episode, when I first played with AI, one of the first things I did with it
uh
was I was able to make some pretty scary malware like right away,
mm,
custom targeted
wow.
malware that it was like, sure, here you go, here's how you do it. And
Wow.
it gave me instructions on how to use it and everything.
Wow.
Um, and that was just because it was just answering my question,
Right.
and so then the next version that they came out with, they had told it, oh, if someone asks you to do this, that's wrong. you
Mhm.
know so they have to train the intelligence on what's right and what's wrong and the things that we
Right.
take for granted in terms of morality, like don't kill the controller.
Right. Yep.
And so, yeah, it is a misconception that it has a lot of uses, but I think one of the problems is you can't get rid of all of your programmers if you're a business and hope to replace
Mhm.
it with AI
Right.
because
So
it's not going to be capable of doing that if you don't have someone who knows the prompts and the output.
I didn't realize this. Chat GPT it was launched November 2022, November 30th, 2022. So it'll be 2 years this year.
Hmm.
Those conversations should have happened way before Chat GPT was released in the wild. Um,
Oh yeah.
and I looked this up. So the automobile was invented in 1886. Guess when the first traffic light was installed?
When
1914.
1905.
1914.
Oh wow. Okay.
So,
20 years later.
right. I mean, and it's because of those lessons that I really do think that, hey, we should have known better by now. You know,
Hmm.
we you have these automobiles. They didn't realize, like, right, people could be crossing the road. Hey, here comes this thing or whatever that, most people don't haven't interacted with. Yeah, it's causing deaths.
Yeah, I
Eh,
remember going to the Disrupt conference a while
uh,
ago and hearing a guy talk about how, everybody, the Disrupt conference in Silicon Valley, they talk about disrupt like it's a positive thing because they do. They
mhm,
try to use the term as a positive thing. But I remember this one guy had a talk where he's like, societal disruption is something that we really should be taking seriously and be careful about because it has a potential to be very harmful for a lot of people.
yes, sir.
And he was basically kind of everybody was saying, yeah, whatever. That was kind of, but I think, that the more AI is being implemented, the more I think back on that. And, the
Right.
person was trying, he was warning the right crowd. They just weren't listening.
Yeah. I mean, it's true, man. We it's I think it's I don't want to say it's too late, but I do think we're behind the curve here. We really should have started taking these precautions and implementing some kind of rules and regulations beforehand. And I'm not talking about just here in the US. I'm talking about globally, the
Hmm.
world, because the fact is we have, whether you want to characterize them as enemies or hostile nations,
Hmm.
they are out there.
Yeah.
Russia, China, who knows what they would have done, but
There are some bad people.
right. And we needed to be more proactive in regards to that. But now that it's out there, I don't know how effective we're going to be in implementing something like that. We're behind the curve.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just finished reading a book recently
Mhm.
that it's called End Times.
Uh-huh.
It's about elites, counter elites, and political disintegration.
Hmm.
I don't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but it's a recent release. And the author was talking about basically how societies and governments have risen and fallen in the past, and
Hmm.
you know where he saw the US in terms of our political stability and situation. And it's interesting that, we are in the middle of simultaneous things happening in terms of the political situation here.
Mhm.
And there's just the wealth gap and the political division, the cultural division that they've sown with that political division, and how
Mhm.
that all feeds into the inability that we have to be able to do what should be simple things and regulate new technologies and stuff like that. We can't even agree as a society on, you know, basics of whether or not, we should have democracy. And that's, are we going to be able to come to an agreement on how AI, where AI should be in society? We can't even agree we have
Right.
a society.
Right. Well, I mean, we have a culture of extremists on both sides. And if you look at our political system here, um,
I don't know.
moderates.
I would
Well,
argue that we have um, it's not so much about political extremists on both sides. It's about political, and this is kind of where the book goes. It's about political elites and elite aspirant people, people who are trying to get into the elite status, and the division that it causes within a society. Because basically, what you're talking about are people with any degree of wealth or power who then start fighting amongst themselves, and the rest of society suffers.
Well, again, that may be true. I haven't read the book, but if you think about the number of people that you meet on, I wouldn't consider them political elites. Most people don't have no political aspirations. They don't run for office or anything. Now they'll spout
Right.
a political bent or
But not
whatever,
all
one
elites are
way or the other.
political elites. I think what it's talking about are people with the small percentage of people in a society, and in our society, it's getting smaller, who have um, some amount of wealth, comfort, and power. Even if they're not political and they don't use it, their status and wealth give them a position that other people don't have.
Okay, I can
And
get with that, but my thing is that the majority of people that we see out here protesting,
yeah,
the number of people that you can have a conversation with,
is
and
shrinking. Yeah,
right, because again, my point is that in our political structure, we've driven out the moderates or the centrists on
yeah,
both sides.
yeah.
So now you have, hey, you know I don't want nothing to do with abortion. And if you have anything to do with abortion, it's a no for me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear anything else. Then you
It's
have those others that, hey, you have to embrace the LGBTQ, faction. And if you don't want to do that, then they don't want to hear anything that you have to say.
mhm.
So right, we have to get to a point where we can at least discuss issues. We might not agree, but at least we can say, okay, I understand your position, and how do I deal with my beliefs, and where do we go from that, and the differences between the two. Right now,
Mhm.
neither side wants to hear anything the other wants to hear.
Well, to an extent, I agree. That's true. When it comes to some of those disagreements, I mean, it comes down to whether or not, you know, one side says the other side shouldn't exist, and the other side says that they have a right to exist. Can't they meet somewhere in the middle? Like, can we just kill half of you? And would that be okay? Like, you know,
Oh
I
well,
mean,
hey,
those kinds of
let's put it
disagreements,
into
that's
the
not really,
AI's hands or whatever, and see what they come up with.
what's that?
I said, let's put the decision in the AI hand, and see what
Yeah, and
decision
that's
they
the
come up
problem. It
with.
depends on how you train the AI. If you were to tell the AI, come up with a solution to this problem, these people want to kill a reasonable solution without guardrails would be, okay, just kill half of them.
Hey, yeah,
You
hey,
know,
let's just kill 25% of them.
right? You know, there are, yeah, and that's part of America's always been a bit of a challenge when it comes to that because we don't have a shared cultural history. America was thrown together through a lot of different situations, and the people don't have, like you and I come from different ethnic histories.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up here in this country together through completely different stories. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that lack of a shared culture, people who live in other foreign countries like Germany or Italy or whatever, they go back thousands of years. They have
Mm-hmm.
indigenous roots in those countries. um we as Americans were not indigenous to this land, so we don't have that kind of history. So they had to invent another kind of culture for us too. I was talking to my son about this recently. That's why
Hmm.
the founding fathers, after they invented the country, they had to come up with some shared stories about America.
Hmm.
And that's kind of why we have things like, you know, uh, the mythology around George Washington and the story, Columbia, which the artificial, the goddess that was made up by Ben Franklin. That's the name of our seat of government, the District of Columbia.
Hmm.
And Columbia's image appears in the state houses of every nation, of every state in the Union, because
Hmm.
it was the official American goddess that
Hmm.
they made up, because they wanted everybody who lived here to have something shared culturally to try to make a unified nation.
Well,
But that's what's kind of the problem that we see now, is that it's very easy to tear this nation apart. Like you'd mentioned a couple of issues that are like old standing issues, abortion and gay
hmm.
rights.
Hmm.
But like even just more recently, the Israel Hamas war has turned
Hmm.
into a major flashpoint culturally here.
Right.
Um, it's been very easy for people to use AI to create images or even videos of supposed atrocities
Hmm.
that may have never happened,
Right.
but it
Well, I mean
outrages millions of people.
that goes back, like started the video off with AI is being used to create scams, and
Right.
so false news is just another scam.
Yeah.
And we've been
Yeah.
dealing with false news, and that now we just have an AI that's able to generate that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's being used. It's a tool. It's another tool. And that
Right.
tool's been weaponized already. And that's why, the people who created this tool are begging Congress to regulate it, because it's
Yeah.
Frankenstein's creator is begging Congress to regulate their monster.
Hey, I I understand. I mean, I've always said that Congress should do something. There's a lot of people that believe that government shouldn't do anything, and I disagree with that. But
I think this is an example of one of the reasons they're wrong.
right.
If you just step back and don't let government do anything, if government wasn't out there to control who had access to nuclear technology and radioactive materials, we would have blown ourselves up as a society by now.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Somebody
sir.
would have made a homemade nuke and done
Right.
something incredibly stupid. And there's those people out there I know who are extremists who say, well, that's their right.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's crazy.
Hey, man, some of them libertarians, boy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's back to the book I read a while ago about the town in New Hampshire, that the libertarian town in New Hampshire that they set up.
I hadn't heard about that.
The town that bears destroyed or something like that, I think is the name of the book. But basically what
Uh,
it came down to was they created a libertarian town with no government services, no rules. Everybody could just do whatever they wanted. And
mhm.
so they did. And what ended up happening was garbage piled up. It attracted a bunch of bears. So many bears came into the town. And basically the town was destroyed. Long story short. Um, Libertarianism just basically destroyed this town in a matter of a few short years.
Hey, so can I go buy a house in that town?
Nowadays, I don't even know if that towns exists anymore. You might be able to go buy some property out there now. It's probably woodlands again, reclaimed. Yeah, the ruins that formerly were that town.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, I don't know what is to become of AI. Like you said, companies are trying to incorporate AI in so many aspects.
Many of them
Uh,
are trying to look innovative and look like they're staying at the forefront of technology.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, it's an opportunity for them to mess up pretty bad if they did something like put it in charge. I've seen some people have done some pretty crazy things with AI. Tried to come up with how do I make $1 million with AI and all that and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which actually has some valid uses. You using it to analyze data is a legitimate use.
Yeah,
Um, but
mhm.
letting it make all of your decisions, like people say, oh, well, maybe we should let it, you know, put it in charge of our sales and business decision. You could actually put it in charge. I will make an argument. If you gave it the right prompts, you could put an AI in charge of a company and it might
Mhm.
actually do well if you gave it the right prompts.
Yeah, I worry about the people that would give it those prompts to do it in an effective and responsible manner.
Yeah.
Now, right, I've read some stories where individuals would say, "How do I start, this type of business?" And the AI has given them, steps to do that. It'd be interesting to see if a company would get some kind of like long-term business plan or model from an AI and use it that way. Hey,
Yeah.
how do I increase profits by this amount without laying off half my workforce, or
Hmm.
without harming the environment or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. No, that's a good. I mean, using it for brainstorming is something I've legitimately used AI for. Writing ideas, plot story ideas. And we've talked about
Right.
that before in our D&D episodes. I use that AI for that all the time.
Yeah.
Um, Even analyzing, like we mentioned, analyzing data. I've used it for
Mhm.
analyzing my resume or for suggesting, marketing ideas for a business, or even like analyze a business plan and give improvement suggestions, things like that.
Uh-huh.
But it's best as an advisor. That's the trick,
Right.
not putting
I
it
hear
in
you.
charge.
Right.
So
Well, hey, how would you put it in charge?
yeah,
Could
yeah,
could
that's the
I
trick.
say, hey, AI, here's my, IRA
It's about to
information.
cut out on us, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
think
We
we're
got less than a minute. All
sorry, we're
right.
afraid we're out of time.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot to talk about and a
It
lot
is.
to process. So, we'll catch you next time here on Intellicide. This is Anthony Gentry and Kyle Palmerville. We're signing off.
Have a fantastic day.
Yep.